starting with Doug. The extraterritorial jurisdiction ordinance placed onto the town residents by the village appears to be moving towards a modification or removal by the village board. This is in part due to increased communication by the members of both boards and community input. The new village president has been open and honest in his desire to modify the ETJ, which is a huge step in getting past the poor relations shown in the last few years between the town and the village. If elected, how do you plan to further the collaboration between both communities for a common goal to be a better Waterford?
Good question. Obviously, we had a little time spent on the border agreement. I think a couple hundred hours, the three of us, myself, Tom, and Dale Berkey, and two village board members. We had a lot of good conversations on that. Were there a couple of boxes that weren't checked? Yes, the majority were. I think we need to go back with that. First, I'd like to commend the village president for talking about reducing it down to a 5 acre. I think that's a great step with working with us. The people that brought up and had issues with the border agreement, that's great, but what were their answers? How would they like us to move forward? They didn't really give us answers, just, we don't like that. Well, tell us what you don't like about it and how can we correct it? That would be the first step on trying to get the border agreement. And, you know, granted, we're still two different entities, but we agreed to work together as one Waterford. Like I had said a while back, a lot of people in the town don't know the difference between the town and the village. Simple way I tell them is, you have a 3-digit number, you're in the village. So we need to work together and try to combine services and move forward.
I know it's been touched on, but I think another good way we're so close, we have to work together, but, you know, everybody said grants, you know, we should probably have, I hesitate to say committee, but maybe a pairing between the village and the town of what grants we can get together that will help us all fit our needs. And I think that's a really good stepping stone. I commend them for wanting to take that 20-acre thing off. I think that was perfect because of the it was probably done as spite as from a former town chair a few chairs ago. And then I think that with a border agreement, we should, as a town, we should have more public input. That's when I started getting interested in this. There really wasn't a lot of information put out there. So again, with Facebook and everybody's got an opinion anonymously or whatever, I think there probably was a good fair amount of misinformation on the border agreement. I mean, and I think that's one of the things that clear communication on our side to our residents that this is what it is, and then maybe even have a public forum, get some input, and see how it helps us.
I believe that the boundary agreement is going to be essential for us to develop a plan for growth and initiate that plan going forward. It makes perfect sense to work more closely with the village, especially as you look to develop areas and land that are on the boundaries. This is as I understand in my research, it's a very common agreement that's done throughout Wisconsin with various municipalities that share borders. They want to have an organized approach towards development and growth. They want to have an organized approach to how they're going to work together to resolve issues as issues come up. So I think that alone makes this a very important agreement for us to look at again. I'd like to see it pass. Want to make sure that all the stakeholders involved have had a say, that we have more public input. I know the team that put it together in town was key in putting it together, really sought out a lot of public input, but I think it's important to revisit that with the public and see what other input we can get going forward.
So I'm going to start my answer with a rebuttal to Phil, because I would challenge back that there wasn't an opportunity for public input and opportunity to ask questions and get information. The Boundary Committee that worked for 2 years held 3, not required, but 3 community listening sessions that were not required by the state or anything, in the interest of increasing complete transparency around the work that was happening. These were held in a large group room at the high school, periodically during the course of the 2-year experience, where we had the opportunity for public to come in and ask questions, get information about how we were progressing through the agreement. And there was a state mandated public hearing that was held last February on it as well. So in terms of openness and communication and information shared and community input to the process, it was significant, in fact, more than was required, significantly more than was required by the state. So that said, I will echo what these other gentlemen are saying in terms of the importance of moving this forward. I want to commend President Jaski and the work that he's doing right now to address one of the issues that was addressed in the boundary agreement, but I will emphasize it was only one particular point of a boundary agreement that contained many, many different mutually beneficial elements to both the town and the village. And one of the key ones, and I'm going to read right from the slide from one of the listening sessions that we had, was the formation of a Waterford Joint Strategic Planning Committee. Establish an ongoing joint strategic planning committee between the town and the village that includes representatives from both, appointed by the town chair and the village president, accountable for oversight of the cooperative boundary plan, collaborative strategic planning on matters impacting and beneficial to the greater Waterford community, development of ideas to enhance Waterford's quality of life, optimize your services, reduce costs, and maximize efficiencies, proactive, transparent, constructive communication, and developing joint proposals that go to both the village board and the town board for mutually beneficial initiatives that benefit both communities. That is in the boundary plan proposal.
Boundary agreement, just so everybody knows, I've got my statement on the boundary agreement back here if you want to take it along and see it, because I can't spend that much time discussing it. Basically, the first thing to understand is what's a town, what's a village, and what does each have, and what is the responsibility of each. That is an important factor before you can even move forward. You got to understand where you're coming from before you can go forward. So I would encourage anybody that's interested in the border agreement to please do a little bit of homework. My statement is on the back table here for anybody to read.
All right. Back to you, Phil. This dovetails a little bit on the boundary stuff, the next few questions. So some of these you might be able to give a little shorter answer possibly, I'm hoping. Do you support the boundary agreement in its current form? If not, what modifications do you see necessary and why?
For the most part, I think it was a good thing. Maybe Tom, you could ask this. Was it a 40 or 50 year? It was 50, right?
Right, by concept, the state designs these to be long-term, multi-decade agreements.
So I thought 50 years was a long time, just in my opinion. I mean, that's almost like generational. But for the most part, I think it was a good plan. I mean, there was a few minor things, but hey, nothing's perfect. So I just think, and back to what Tom was saying, it was a 2-year process, but I started getting involved, started going to town, and I was only a year probably into this. And again, I went to some meetings. I was very curious on what the PD was doing, and it was just basically not a lot at the meeting. And again, it goes back with, maybe if we had a better Facebook page or a better website that the commoner could have educated themselves a little bit on. So I'll keep my answer short.
I think for the most part, as it's written and developed, it's a great agreement. Is there anything that I would add to that agreement? I think I'd probably look to ensure that there is a mechanism in place, and it perhaps sounds like it might be, as Tom read off some of the bullet points, of how does the town and the village collaborate going forward. You know, I think by engaging in this agreement, it's a huge step forward, and it reduces a lot of the past that I believe existed here in the town and the village with some of the animosities between the two municipalities. So I'd like to see less animosity. I'd like to see more collaboration, and I would hope that this agreement would be a catalyst to develop that further.
Yeah, I would say that if the extraterritorial jurisdiction issue is addressed outside of the boundary agreement, I think there's probably an element in there that can be taken out with respect to the town's focus on incorporation or potential incorporation. Beyond that, there are significant benefits within this boundary agreement. I wouldn't take anything else out. I've read just one of the things in terms of the Joint Strategic Planning Committee that existed. There could be other things that could be put in the boundary agreement and memorialized within there in terms of other collaboration. We've touched on some of these, you know, already up here in terms of further sharing and resource collaboration at the public works level or within the court system or other areas of municipal government that are duplicative across the town and the village and might be shared or optimized if we did more in that regard. There's lots of opportunity to add more things in. We specifically stayed away from some of those things because either it was heavy enough the way that it was, or you know, there were other viewpoints on some of that. But I think that largely the things that are in the boundary agreement as it had been defined, aside from those couple things that I mentioned, if they were taken care of ahead of time, that would remain.
I think the work that this group did on that border agreement was outstanding. I've lived through border agreements in other towns. In particular, the town of Lisbon was stopped from doing what they wanted to do by the village of Sussex. It's a difficult process to get it done. And these gentlemen and the gentleman from the village worked extensively to come up with a solid agreement. Did both parties get what they want? No. But it's a starting point to move forward, and I am all for what is currently there, and then things can be worked out in the future if need be.
I echo Tom's opinion on that. The committee was added to that so there would be feedback in case they wanted to change it, where both municipalities agreed to it, they could. The other good thing was most border agreements, after the term of the agreement, the land that was going to be designated possibly in the village would go to the village. In ours, it would go back to the town if it wasn't annexed in. The only thing I think maybe we could revisit would be possibly how many years. It was originally a 50-year agreement, which I was for. We did change, I believe, to 40 years. I heard a lot of complaints that it should have been shorter. Maybe that's the only thing that we could maybe revisit. Other than that, there's a lot more stuff we could put into it when we sit back down again.
All right, Bill, next question. Have you built any relations with members of the village board, and have you shown any collaborative efforts with any of them? And if so, please describe.
That's a great question. Yes, recently have developed a relationship with some of the members of the village board, Adam Jeske and his previous town administrator. Worked with them very closely. I mentioned earlier I'm a member of the WWMD, the APM community, and we had an issue this last summer where we lost our offload site for our weed harvesting operations. And we put out a call for help. And I can tell you that one of the first responders was the village, was Adam Jeske and his team. They said that they had some property available to us next to Spanky's, and they allowed us to dump some weeds there. So that was great, and that was the start of a good, communication between the WWMD and the village. Then another example that occurred was later in the summer, we had the flooding. And there was a lot of big debris, trees and so forth floating down the river. And again, we reached out for help. And I was very pleased to see that both the town and the village stepped up and said, hey, we're here to help. If you're gonna do a debris removal service and have somebody come in to do that, we'd be happy to do a little cost sharing with the WWMD, which the town and the village did, and we initiated that. So yeah, I'm excited going forward. I think the village has a good board, and I'd like to get to know them better if I'm elected to this position.
Yeah, great question. Adam, I would just call you out and say that one of the best and most satisfying blessings for me in working for 2 years with you and the other folks from the village on this was the relationship that we established. And my respect for you as a leader and the work that you're doing is outstanding. So thank you. I have had the opportunity to work with Adam, with his team, with other members of the village board on this boundary agreement and on the work that Bill just mentioned with respect to the WWMD collaboration, where the community truly banded together to address some significant crisis issues that were happening on the waterway at the time, and everybody pitched in, everybody supported the work that needed to be done, and it was outstanding. So I feel very good about the relationships that I have built with the village leadership. And I feel that that is reciprocated, there is mutual respect. Do we always agree? No, we don't. But any disagreement or things that we need to work through are done in a very, very positive, productive, collaborative way where everyone is seeking mutual win-win solutions that benefit both communities and the greater Waterford area overall. That is special, and it's something that we could build on significantly more than we have up to this point, and I would like to see that happen.
I have not done a lot with the village. However, I've done a lot with community, the village of and the town of. From food drives, which the town got behind, which the village got behind. Currently, we are working on a educational event having to do with sexual exploitation. The village has been outstanding in helping promote that, as is the town. So I've made contacts with certain members of the village, and I really am encouraged by their openness to discuss things in an open, fair manner, and listen, and I listen, and we put things together. That's the way it should work. Community.
Thank you. Obviously, being on the committee, I worked with Mr. Chasky, Don Houston, great people to work with. We had a lot of hours and we didn't always agree, but we left there and we had a mutual understanding on where we were going to be. I talked several times with Troy McReynolds, talked to people who are on the village police committee now, and I think there's going to be, moving forward, we will be having a mutual joint meeting with them in the near future. So yeah, and other board members, I know them from being around the area for quite a few years.
Well, here's gonna be a different answer. No. Not that I, like I said, I never really held a political office before this. I didn't really member of a school board or anything like that, so no, I've not dealt with or had any dealings with the village board. But I'm sure watching their meetings, they seem like they're a fine bunch of people and they got their act together, so I could easily see them being easy to work with.
All right. Next question. Would you support the town and the village as one municipality? Yes or no? Why is that your position? And what would be the advantage for both communities to to do so or not do so?
So I think it's premature at this point in time to say the town and the village are going to be combined as one municipality. I think that if we project long term, and we just look at many of our neighbors and neighboring communities, it may be an inevitability that will happen sometime in the distant future. But is today the time to do that? I don't think we're ready. I think we have an awful lot of work to do on our own, in the town, and on opportunities to collaborate with the village, as we've talked about multiple times already tonight, without saying that we're going to put the stake in the ground and merge into one. So my position is I am all for increasing the opportunity to work together with the village and doing real, meaningful, long-lasting, significant work together for the betterment of the greater Waterford community. And let's see if and what kind of momentum builds from that and where it might go. But my answer, if someone said yes or no, my answer would be, as of today, my answer is no. But all those other points wrap into that.
I echo what Tom says. However, I have stated publicly, and I got a mission statement back there as far as this goes. Doug raised an interesting point when he said a Class A city, Class 4 city. So, you know, the world is changing. Money's tight. Is it going to get better? We don't know, but we should never shut the door to what we have to do moving forward. And if that's 5 years down the road, 10, 15, so be it. But let's not close the door at this moment to even start simple discussions. Doesn't have to be in detail, doesn't have to be anything, but for me to sit here and say, what's the benefit? What's the drawback? I would have personal opinions on that, but that isn't the way this should be done. It takes a village and it takes a town to decide when, where, and how. So that's my opinion on it.
We actually spent a couple meetings at the border agreement discussing whether we should drop the border agreement and look at forming a city, and it was decided at that time not to. Are there advantages? Probably. I don't know for sure. It would be nice to look at it. That's why I brought up possibly having a non-binding referendum. What do the people in our municipality want? It might overwhelmingly be voted, no, we don't want to, or it might surprise us and say yes. I don't know. It would be a good way just to get a feel of what the people in the area want. Like I said, the border agreement committee did spend at least 2 or 3 meetings on it, and there was a lot of discussion. In fact, we even talked to the state on it. And we decided at that time to move forward with the border agreement.
I'm gonna go with, I like our town. I'm all for working real closely with the village. You know, we can be mutual beneficial, but I feel like bigger is not always better. And I don't think the city would benefit us right now at all, the city of Waterford. And I feel like we should concentrate helping us ourselves as a town, and work with the village and just move forward. But I am not in favor of making a city of Waterford.
It's a great topic. I think it's one that really requires a lot more research and analysis before formal decisions can be made. Right now, we have approximately 6,500 citizens in the town of Waterford. I'm not quite sure what's in the village for population. I'm not sure if we looked at combining that and then looked at all the resources and assets and things that we would have between the two municipalities. What would that look like? What would it do to everybody's taxes? I mean, that's kind of first and foremost, we have to look at that and have that in our minds. like many have said, and I've said it up here as well, I'm all about collaboration. I think it makes sense to explore a better collaboration for perhaps one police department. It makes sense perhaps to look at collaboration as costs continue to rise and labor continues to rise, and it's hard to find good skilled labor for the fire department. Does that make sense to possibly have a collaboration there? Tom's mentioned DPW. I think they looked at that earlier in the year. We have a great DPW department here in the town. I know they have a great one in the village. So I think all those things could be on the table and should be discussed and reviewed. But I think at this juncture, at this time, it's very hard to say yes or no. For me, it's a maybe. For me, I'd like to explore it further. I'd like to better understand overall costs and sharing and impact to the tax base.
All right. Dave, you're first one up here. Would you support a non-binding advisory referendum to ask the residents if the village or town should seriously look at forming the city of Waterford? Some of these questions kind of go together, guys. So.
I believe I answered that. I don't know if we're ready right now, but if the town residents would feel that way at this point, yeah, referendum. That's the only way to do it, to get the actual residents' input.
I believe I sort of answered that on the last round, so thank you.
Fair enough. Just reading them as I have them.
A non-binding referendum would be awesome. I mean, I think that's the ultimate public opinion. I mean, and I think everybody should have their chance to have their opinion heard. So yes, I would support a non-binding referendum.
Yeah, from my perspective, again, I refer back to more analysis and data, research to be done, put that all out to the public so the public can be well informed, and then have the referendum so that people have more information before they vote on such things. But I think it would be a good thing to have a referendum once we have the information out to the public and have discussion with the public on it.
So I agree with Bill. I think getting more information is important, and then I would absolutely support the non-binding referendum. More important than information, though, I think there's significant opportunities for demonstrated wins, demonstrated collaboration, real, meaningful, integrated work together that actually is visible to the community, as opposed to a theoretical idea of saying, hey, what would you think about? We don't have anything to go off of right now, and if we had some of that demonstrated actual real work having been completed with some miles behind us, with some wins and experiences of what worked and what maybe didn't work, I think that would go a much longer way to actually being a catalyst to have such a referendum.
All right. Doug.
Yes.
There have been in the past and are currently what many could conceive to be a conflict of interest between sitting on the town board concurrently while on other boards, having spouses as town employees, among other scenarios. What are your views on this matter, and do you feel the issue of conflict of interest with the board members should be addressed?
That's a really good question. Obviously, everybody knows I'm also on the high school board. The high school board really doesn't interact with the town board at all. We have two members that do an outstanding job on the WWMD. From what I heard, they would recluse themselves if there was an issue before the town. The only thing is they would be open to discussion. So would that influence anybody? I don't know. Like I said, they do a great job on the WWMD, so I can't really fault them for that. But I could see where all of a sudden 2 people reclusing themselves, you only have 3 people voting on an issue. And we know what happened with that a couple of years ago.
So my wife does work part-time for the town, part-time, and before I decided to run, I took that into consideration. Because I feel that it could be perceived as a conflict of interest. I would never have anything to, I would recuse myself for anything to deal with salary. I feel that's a big thing, but I am gonna point out Dale Gerke was 27 years and 30, he had a wife and a daughter that worked there, and I don't even think he recused himself on some of those votes until the end. So for me, it's an integrity issue, and I would never put my integrity over anything as far as money or anything like that. And like I said, I gave a lot of thought to this before I even ran.
I think it's a great question and one that needs to be dealt with. I'm going to refer back to something that Dave said earlier, and that is to have policies and procedures. And I think that this is an area where the town would need to have that in place if they don't already. Obviously, any kind of opportunity for personal gain or financial gain or enhancement of one's property by a board member on a decision that's before them, I think they need to recuse themselves on that. I think those are pretty clear. I think it gets a little muddied though as we move forward and look at other situations. You know, I recently responded online to this question, and you know, do I recuse myself if my street is up for repaving and resurfacing? There's 17 houses on the street. Do I recuse myself on Woods Drive, a street that I need to get to in order to drive each day in order to get to 164 to get to work and get anywhere else out of my neighborhood? So if I'm ruling on something or that's involving Woods Drive, do I recuse myself? You know, at what point do you stop? You know, people have said, well, Tom and I serve on the WWMD, you're with the waterway, oh, you should recuse yourself on anything on the waterway. Well, I think that depends. I don't know what's going to come up, if anything comes up with the town board and the waterway. First off, the waterway is a great resource here for the town of Waterford. It's in our name, so it's a resource that needs to be maintained and upkept. And there's approximately over 2,000 residents whose property butt up to that, including myself. So, and the waterway is owned by the public, as are roads. So where does it stop as far as conflicts of interest? You know, that might be something we can decide and develop policies and procedures for in the future.
So this is an interesting question, and it goes back in my mind to the whole desirability of the small town feel. My observation of one of the characteristics of a small town is, for better or worse, it seems like there's a very small number of leaders in a small town that are willing to step up and lead in any given capacity. So in our small town, we have leaders, a small number of leaders or people who desire to be leaders that happen to want to commit themselves to multiple key organizational entities that make the small town great. Does it bring up the potential for conflict of interest? It could. It certainly could. From my perspective, I don't know if you've got a small number of people who are willing to actually put themselves in terms of their time and energy into leading different elements of the town that need to be led. You have to be able to address it. I think some great suggestions were made in terms of policy, in terms of standards. I will tell you personally myself, in my 9 months on the town board, there have been a couple of WWMD related topics that have come before the town board. I have had no qualms, not even batted an eye, about publicly recusing myself from any of those votes. And I would continue to do that in the future. But as Bill's pointing out, not all issues, not all opportunities, not all discussions are exactly the same. So I think there needs to be some latitude there in terms of how those situations are handled.
conflict of interest, what is it? What is it? Well, back on the back table there's a complete breakdown of what conflict of interest means and how different scenarios work out. Now, the examples aren't there, but the ideas are there, okay? One of the big ones, in my eyes, is bias conflict. And that has been proven by study to be a psychological thing. The person that's doing it doesn't even know it. Now, I'll point something out, and it's not meant to be derogatory. One of the members up here that are running put out a big long paragraph that talked about getting control of the DPW, how, the facilities, the police department, and do we do something there? And in the same paragraph, in the same basic sentence, then turned around and said, and I think we can come up with a way for the town to help finance, and that's not the exact words, the dredging of the waterway. Well, that is a bias conflict of interest, absolutely. The state has laws about conflict of interest. I came from county government, not Racine, a different county, and in my role, I couldn't even go to lunch with a vendor. Anything of any significant value was a conflict of interest. So I hope you people that are here today will go and get what I have on the back table, read it, and then understand what truly is a conflict of interest. And it's not easy to determine.
Yep. All right. I'm just going to state again for everybody in the crowd and those that are watching this stream, I had zero input in any of these questions. So I just want to everybody understand, totally neutral. I'm reading them as they come. So just in case anybody is wondering, I just have to, I'm watching the crowd. So do you believe non-waterfront property owners should be required to help pay for waterway dredging or weed control? And if so, what legal authority and benefit standard should you rely on to justify this? That's why I just prefaced this. So, sorry.
Great question. So I mentioned earlier with the WWMD, that's one of the organizations I support. I'm on the board for the APM, Aquatic Plant Management Chairman. We have approximately around 950 homes on the waterway, and each home that's on the waterway is charged $375 a year. That revenue stream goes towards weed harvesting. It goes towards herbicides being put into the waterway to deal with the plants and manage the plants. It goes towards a lot of other things too that the WWMD does for the public and for the community and for the riparians that live on the waterway. We have been trying to deal with the dredging issue for probably coming up on perhaps 20 years. I see Gary in the audience. He probably knows the date more than I do. It's been a long time. And this waterway is filling in with sediment. So something has to be done. We have gone before the Wisconsin DNR and we have pleaded to them for support and help for dredging. They don't have any funds for it. So we have observed what's gone on in our neighboring Burlington with Browns Lake, and they were successful in obtaining some funds for their dredging project. They obtained funding from the county, they obtained funding from the state. It's my opinion that funding just cannot come from one entity. It's my opinion that one entity can't do the job alone. We need a collaborative in order to tackle this challenge that we have. We have a tremendous resource in our community that resource can be used for further development and attraction of people to come into our community. And I think we need to owe it to ourselves to support it and maintain it. With that said, does the town have the funding for any type of dredging? No, I don't think they do. Can the town get together with the WWMD, with perhaps the village, with the county of Racine, and can we go to the state that has a state surplus of resources and funding and go to them and say, can you contribute to this effort to maintain our waterway? That would be something that I would be supporting. And we need the town to get behind it. It doesn't necessarily have to come in the form of financial. It can come in the form of support and voices and a tax base that can go forward with us to the state to see if the state can come up with some funding. That's what I would support.
Man, I'm glad you got that question before I. Outstanding answer, Bill, and I agree wholeheartedly with how Bill framed that answer. And I will add to it a couple of things. The things he just mentioned in terms of the municipal, county, and state collaboration is already going on. We have wheels in motion to try to make things work and to move the ball forward to try to find the dollars that we're going to need to save this waterway. And for anyone who doesn't live on the waterway, I will simply state this opinion. The waterway, whether you live on it or not, is a significant asset to this community. It is an economic engine that drives significant economic activity and growth and property values in the entire area, not simply for people that live on the waterway. The waterway is in trouble. It needs to be addressed. That is a Waterford problem, whether you live on the waterway or not, in my opinion. That doesn't mean anyone's coming after your wallet to have you contribute. But from the standpoint of the value of the waterway, this is not a Browns Lake. It's not one little corner of a municipality. It is literally 1/3 or more of this entire township. And when you look at the property tax base and you look at the area covered, it is significant. So the waterway being in trouble is a Waterford problem. It's not the problem of people who just have property on the waterway.
Well, I'm going to be the naysayer here, and I'm not afraid to do it. I live out in the country, nowhere near the water. I've never even been on the water. Okay, the riparian, one person up here has actually said that nobody but the riparian will pay for this. It won't come from our dollars. We don't know if it will or not. I'm not for it, not one bit. They benefit, anybody that lives on the water is going to benefit greatly from the dredging. I'm not, I'm sorry. My value of my land is not going to go up 1 red cent because the river was dredged. I'm sorry, that's the way it is. I heard a number of 2,000 people. Okay, so 1/3 of the people and are going to decide if this is the way it's going to go. And the reason I'm saying that is if you have 2 board members that are all for the dredging, they're going to have the influence on that board that everybody in the town could pay for it. I'm against it 100%. And I'm honest, I do not hide the fact. That's my opinion on it.
Yes, I'm a riparian owner. I do benefit from the waterway, and yes, I do pay $375 a year on my taxes. I can see where the town could help support, not financially, but with other municipalities, especially with the state. Until lately, there was no money available for dredging. Well, lo and behold, Robin Voss, of course it was his district, got how many $1 million to dredge Browns Lake? And I hear there's money available to do Echo Lake. Well, Robin Voss opened that door. I could see where the town could get behind saying, show us some of the money. And another thing which a lot of people don't know is the high school does have a person on staff that helps write grants. So they could also help write grants for any of the municipalities, whether it be the town, the village, or for the WWMD.
I don't live on the lake either, so two out here. But it is a great resource. I mean, it is a great part of our community. And I'm not so sure, maybe you or Tom can answer this, but I don't think you can just wave a wand and say everybody has to pay for this. I don't think there's even a legal precedent that everybody has to pay for it. But just my personal opinion, boy, that makes me think a lot less of the DNR. They sure have a nice budget, and if they're not, that's their whole mission statement, preserve the lakes. So I think if it came to backing the group with the state, I think the town and the village should help that. I mean, I think that it's like, it sounds like a scary question, like, are you gonna come pick our pockets in the middle of the night? And it sounds like, no, and it doesn't, and also, I don't think legally you could even do it if you tried, so I think it's kind of a moot point, but I think, hey, it's our lake, it's our community, we should want it to be nice, so why not support it any way we can without writing a check?
Okay, next question. Should someone who is running for the board also have business in the town, which could be a conflict of interest, even though they could recuse themselves?
Well, I don't know. I'm going to go back to my small town comment again. It's a small town. People who live in a small town do business in a small town. I'm not sure exactly if there was a specific example that the asker is
I read
thinking
exactly
about,
what I got.
But I would just tell you that, you know, I don't know how many small towns out there don't have people in some element of capacity or leadership that also do business in the small town that they live in. That's part of what vests them in wanting to lead a community. We won't rehash the whole conflict of interest thing because I think we've talked extensively about that, but I'm a little confused by the question because it seems the natural course of things that someone in positions of leadership in a small town would also have a business in a small town.
Yeah, well, it's happened in our town in the past. I know of one gentleman whose son had a repair shop for a motor, and because somebody didn't like that particular board member, they made him recuse himself. There's so much of that goes on in this town that we've lived through it. If there's a conflict of interest, there's a conflict of interest, okay? The Lion Club comes to the town for things. They do great things for the town and the community. But at the same time, our current chairperson has recused himself from voting on them things. And that's the way it has to be. Has to be. You can't have your personal gain affect how you're voting. So that's my stance on it. You probably would never convince me otherwise, and thus why I said you have to understand what conflict, ethics, and bias means. And that's what I put out there on the table to try to help people understand that it's a bigger topic than what we're trying to make it out to be.
Well, I'm at the age where I don't think I'm going to be starting a small business. Yes, my son has a business in the township. I have no financial investment in it, never have. And yes, when his bills came before the town, when he repaired the water patrol boat, I did recluse myself originally from the whole thing for that month, and they said I could just recluse myself from that one item, which I did. If you're gonna have a small business and it's gonna affect your bottom dollar where you're gonna be making money off it, yeah, I think you shouldn't be voting on it. Like I said, I reclused myself just because he was my son, even though I had no financial gain one way or the other on it.
Yeah, you can't let them off easy, guys. Come on.
Chris, can you read the question one more time?
Sure
I
thing.
just want to make sure I'm understanding this.
Should someone who is running for the board also have a business in the town which could be a conflict of interest, even though they could recuse themselves?
So I have a small business, but I don't do business in the town. And I don't think anybody here has a business in the town either. So I kind of think that's a moot point. But, you know, but the other thing too is, you know, I think that we should support our small businesses. You know, like I get fuel for my trucks at Ron's because he's in Michigan. You know, I think I would consider that a conflict of interest though. So I guess I really don't get the question too well.
Yeah, I'm just gonna echo a little bit of what Tom had said. I think mostly in most communities, you've got business leaders that tend to be very involved in their communities, and often they end up in leadership roles in town boards like this. So I don't think there's any conflict of interest in regard to somebody owning a business in the town and then having to deal with new business and so forth and decisions that would come before the board. I don't have a business in the town, so I wouldn't have any conflicts with that.
All right. Dave,
Yes, sir.
what is your plan to fix our failing roads?
Wow, I got a good one there. Hey, it's simple. And when I say it's simple, it is truly simple. It's been said here a couple times. We have to have some strategic planning to fix our roads. You know, I've heard, I don't know this to be true, but I believe it is, that every year some members of the board drive through the town and decide what roads are gonna be done, okay? You know, we've got some nasty roads out there, and just because that one may not be as nasty as that one, why would we do that one? You know what I'm saying? We have to go through our town, assess what our roads are like, totally, and then come up with a strategic plan to spend whatever money is allocated annually to fix that road or them roads, and just go through the list. You gotta have planning. Right now, it's done willy-nilly, and I trust Jim is gonna look at things like that. We can't just, okay, a bunch of board members drive down the road and go, oh, yeah, that one should be fixed. That's not the way to do it, I'm sorry. But I think it's gonna take strategic planning and an effort to actually plan ahead.
Like I said earlier, we need a 5 to 10 year plan for the roads. I will commend the village. They have a map up there and their roads are graded from 1 to 10 on how bad they are, so they know which roads they're gonna be fixing. We need that too. Whether the engineering firm we have now, or maybe a different one, can go out and rate them. I believe they call it the PACER rating. And the other thing is, then we have to do it. We have, I believe, $275 or so $1,000 a year for roads. That's not gonna get very many roads done. We're gonna keep falling behind. Sooner or later, it's gonna be no roads at all, it'll be gravel. That's why I brought up having a bond issue on this so we can address our roads. I'm not sure, but I think the village has a bond issue for their roads. Look at what other municipalities do, take a hint from them.
So I think it's been said a number of times, but I think we should make sure that our engineering firm is actively looking for grants. I mean, that's an easy, if it can be obtained. And also I think with a new DPW going on, we have the opportunity that there should be a report. Maybe there should be a report graded and put out to the town, and just to see which is the worst ones and what needs to be, their attention to be, from the worst to the best, and maybe we can do a little at a time, and then hopefully we can, between grants and everything else, we don't have to go into the bond thing. I just don't feel comfortable right now just taking on more debt when we don't have clear path to pay it.
I currently work for a manufacturer in New Berlin, and we have a pretty strong maintenance department. We have a CapEx, a capital expenditure plan that we review. We've got a 3 and a 5 year plan. What are we going to be doing for upkeep in our facility? What needs to change? We just paved the parking lot this last summer. So where I'm going with this is DPW, I think if they don't already, will need to have a maintenance planning document in place. Need to do the grading of the roads. How is that done? We need to determine a way to do that that's efficient and effective. We need to look at state and federal grants moving forward to be able to pay for these projects as we identify them and put them in our plan. We need to have that strategic road plan be a 10 to 15 year plan. So we're planning for it, we're saving for it, we're hunting for grants. We're also doing maintenance in that time frame. Do we need to, I question this, do we need to look at a different engineering firm? I have some serious concerns over what just happened and is ongoing right now with Plano Road. It's, I believe, several $100,000 over budget, and I don't believe we have the funds to pay for that. How did that happen? I can tell you from my experience in my past that I've run large construction projects. I've dealt with large contracts with contractors, reviewed those contracts. Not every contract is good. Usually the contract is written in the favor of the contractor. So I think that our board had a failure in this recent contract. I think our engineering firm had a failure, and I would think also our attorney had a failure. I think we need to look at all those areas as we move forward to see if we have the right people on the bus.
So I agree with everything that's been suggested here, with the exception of the bond issue. I'm with Phil on this. I do not think that this town is in a position to be borrowing more money at this point in time. That is just, I have not seen or heard anything that would convince me that that is a good idea, knowing what I know about the budget. All of the other suggestions up here about a strategic plan, about assessing it against the state standards, about pursuit of grant funding, about a capital improvement plan, all fundamentally should and absolutely need to happen. The bottom line though is, if we don't grow and drive the revenue side of the ledger, none of that is going to show demonstrable real progress of the kind that people are seeing the need to happen. You have to grow the revenue side of the equation. All of these other things are good ideas. They will tactically do a little bit more on this road here and a little bit more on that road there, and we'll see a little bit over here. But in terms of the significant problem that we have in this town with respect to roads, unless we drive more revenue with thoughtful, planful, desirable development, the way we talked about earlier in this session, we're not going to see the progress that people are hoping for.
All right,
No.
roads,
It's done.
Yep. Don't you remember, Dave? Dave kind of wanted I get the hot potato. All right. Not quite. In regards to the current issue of Buena Park Road project coming in at over $600,000 over budget, what would you have done differently to avoid that from happening, and what steps would you put in place to prevent it from happening in the future?
Well, first off, when you have 36 change orders, somebody in that building should have been asking, how much is this gonna cost? Every time you have a change order, it's gonna cost you money. I don't think it happened. Should the board maybe have been a little more proactive? Maybe, I don't know. It falls back, unfortunately, to the people that were meeting with them on a bi-weekly basis, hearing the change orders and not doing them. One of the things to stop that would be obviously if we have a part-time administrator, I believe our ordinance committee and our operations committee are meeting this week to talk about that, to try and put some guidelines in so it doesn't happen again. Right now, we don't have anything. Who's gonna be on the hook for it? I don't know. I would love to say the engineering firm, but unfortunately, I think it might be the town. I hope not, but I think it will be. This is something that's unacceptable. Like I said, it goes back to the people that were in that building there when they had their bi-weekly discussions. You know, I'm on the school board now. We just had a meeting last week because we are talking about updating the fire suppression system, and we met. And it's going to be a change, but it's still going to be within budget. But the first thing we got was, how much money is it going to cost us?
So I think there's a lot of blame to go around on this. One of the questions I had is, I heard we got like 4 estimates. Did everybody look? I think a lot of the board members should have looked at the estimate. I mean, the more eyes on something, the better. You know, if one estimate's $1.2 million and the other one's $600,000, maybe we should look at that. Also, I think it's easy to spend somebody else's money, to sign a change order like that and not think, oh crap, this is getting out of hand, is a big deal. And I think there needs to be a policy in place that, hey, we have a big project like this, maybe we need a monthly report to the board, you know, sit down, this is where we're at, from the engineering firm and the DPW. And I think that the fact that we're sitting there going, oh, now we need to make a change, just shows that, you know, we're going about this, that this has been done for, 30 years like this. We never had a problem until now, but I don't think we should wait till there is a problem before we get a policy in place.
I think a lot of things could have been done differently. First off, I think it's imperative that you have a specification for a project, any major project that you're embarking on. Contractors bid to the specs so you get more even bids coming in. Once you receive those bids, you've got to pour through them. You've got to look at them and make changes. There are exceptions to almost every contract. If we went forward as a town board and didn't have any exceptions to the contractor's contract, that's a problem. And it can't be just the board members that are doing and looking at that and making those exceptions. We've got to rely on the engineering resources. We've got to rely on the attorney to look over those documents and pour through them and make sure that we aren't taking exceptions and we're writing a contract that's fair that we can enter into. Obviously, we didn't do much of that. If we've got a $600,000 overrun, that's a big miss. And with my background and experience, for 9 years, I worked with hydroelectric dams all around the world. I worked with very large governments and large power utilities. I can tell you that their specifications came in the form of a phone book, and that we would divide up in teams and we would pour through the contract and go through and take exceptions. And oftentimes our bids had to be close to 100 pages to win the award. And it was a lot of back and forth, a lot of discussion taking place. I don't know if the board brought any of the contractors in and had them formally go through their proposals, but that's something that should have been done. And then when you're down selecting to the 2 vendors that you're considering, you need to also do more due diligence with them and ask more questions and make sure that you've got a robust contract going forward. And then you have to hold their feet to the fire. It's project management. You got to work with the Gantt chart. You've got to make sure they're on time. A biggest part of the overruns right now is they were grossly not on time on this project. A lot of overruns, and that's very costly to us. So we have to have that baked into the contract that they have to meet their deliverables and their milestone dates. Obviously, they didn't do that.
So I agree a lot with what Bill said. Bill and I both have significant, large project experience in the corporate world, running projects much, much bigger than the Buena Park Road project. But that project had all the issues that are being described up here. One of the biggest ones, as a sitting board member, I will tell you, there was no visibility into that project. There was no visibility, there was no status until it was way, way, way too late. And that is, I take accountability because I'm a board member and I should have seen that, but there was no visibility brought forward. There was no regular status reporting. There was no steering team of any sort, board member, engineering firm, construction firm, DPW, who should have been regularly meeting and bringing forward statuses of where the project was at. What's been completed, what's planned next, what are the major issues that we're facing, what are the risks that we're facing, and what are the plans to address them. That is standard large project management 101 that is not that difficult to execute. And we have to put processes in place that make sure that those kinds of things happen. The overruns that occurred, as we unpeel the fact that the post-mortem of what actually went on with this thing, there were issues way, way, way back in the design phase, that they tried to crawl their way out of once it was too late. And the cost overruns associated with those things just continued to pile up, and change orders are being rubber stamped in the field as just saying go, 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 with not even a question in terms of what's it gonna cost? What's the impact gonna be? Big problem. And I fully applaud the work that the Operations Committee and the Ordinance Committee are doing to brainstorm more constructive processes that we need to put in place to ensure something like this does not happen again.
I'm going to be gentle in my remarks. Coming from with a PMI, which is Project Management Institute Certificate for Project Management, which I acquired in 1989. I've managed millions of dollar projects, and both in private sector and public sector. For the county, I handled all of the IT infrastructure. And that's a lot of thought has to go into replacing PCs, servers, on and on. Every time a building was built on county grounds, I was part of that project team. So, policies, procedures, and understanding what they need. Contracts, RFPs, RFBs, okay? When you let a contract out, you should be relatively assured that it's going to come within that budget. Anything over 5%, I would have lost my job. And that's the honest to God's truth. If a project I was running came in over 5%, I would lose my job. So, first you got to identify what the problem was. I took a bunch of courses called ATS, Analytic Troubleshooting. And what that means is breaking down the situation to the highest point, not the lowest point. Everybody can point fingers back and forth, and that's what we got going on right now. We have to figure out how to actually handle a project going forward. And lastly, you can't just rely on the board to rubber stamp a contract. I have had many of occasions I've sat on scoring committees where people score the bids. And then they have a bid process after that to meet with the one they chose. And if anything's changed, they gotta go back to the drawing board. So, there's a lot of steps in a project, and we don't follow them. And hopefully, with Chris's board committee and my committee, we'll be able to lay down some fundamental policies and procedures.
All right, gentlemen. What standards of behavior do you expect from yourself and fellow officials? And how do you address public criticism or misinformation in a way that keeps town government respectful and constructive?
Who's it at, Chris? Who's got the mic?
Phil.
Sorry.
Yep.
Sorry.
It's Phil's turning the barrel.
All right, can you repeat the question one more time?
Okay. What standards of behavior do you expect from yourself and fellow officials? And how do you address public criticism or misinformation in a way that keeps town government respectful and constructive?
So, nobody likes criticism, but it's a fact of life. Anybody that's married probably gets a little criticism here and there. And I think one of my strengths is I can disagree with somebody on a particular issue, and I can still have a conversation with them. And I think that's the biggest thing, is to be able to have a conversation with somebody that you don't agree with. As far as, I think if the town did a little bit more better job of putting out there all the transparency, that would take some of this, keyboard warrior, this, that, and the other thing out of the equation of, let's let the town report the facts and the issues, and then have the discussion, not rely on somebody else's Facebook or, hey, a friend of a friend told me this. I think that's a big problem, but I think also you just gotta treat everybody with respect.
What standard of behavior do I expect out of myself? Professional. I'm a servant type leader, so I'm really here for the people. I'm not here for myself. And I want to be open. I want to have open dialogue and interaction. I want to take input. I don't have all the answers. And oftentimes when I give the input, I may have had a position that I was taking, but after further input and hearing everybody else's ideas, I'm willing to change. And I do that quite often, and that's part of my management style and my leadership style. When it comes to criticism, I listen to the inputs I'm receiving from others. Again, I'm not perfect, so it's a good chance I made some mistakes, and I want to hear those out and understand that. I want to hear from somebody else, other than myself, somebody else's perspective. And above all, I want to respect those people that I'm having a dialogue with, and I would expect that they would give me respect back. So if we can all be respectful, then we can have a healthy, good dialogue, and we can be very productive out of that and move things forward.
So what standards do I expect of myself? Honesty, integrity, accountability. I hold myself accountable for every action that I take, every word that I write. Transparency and openness. One of the things I found peculiar about this role is people are kind of all weirded about this whole open meetings law thing. Like, whoa, well, you're saying it on the record, well, be careful. And I'm like, I don't get it. Nothing I say, nothing I write to anybody with respect to anything in this job, I would not hesitate to have out in the open and honestly just laid out there. There's nothing that I hold back, nothing that I'm covering up, nothing that I'm talking to somebody about in the back room about that I wouldn't want anybody else to hear. So I don't get that whole thing. I mean, I'm very, very intentional about every email I write, everything that I say to anybody, and I would welcome any of that be put out in the public domain in any way, shape, or form. So if somebody wants to open a records request me, go for it, man. I have no qualms about anything that I've ever written in this job being out there, at all. When it comes to criticism, I welcome it. To me, like Bill said, I don't have all the answers. If I have a certain position with respect to anything and someone doesn't agree with me, I want to hear about it. I want to hear and I want to understand why. There's an awful big chance that there's a learning opportunity for me there, but I will get a perspective that I didn't have before. That's huge. So I'm not afraid of criticism as long as it's respectful, as long as it's honest, and as long as it's, I welcome criticism when it comes with and here's a solution, here's something that maybe you didn't think about. That's the best kind of criticism because it's also an opportunity to learn, hey, there may be another way to address an issue. So I welcome criticism And I hold myself to a very high standard in terms of how I operate in this role or in any role that I play in my life.
Well, I know some people don't like the way I approach things. That's okay. That's okay. I can understand that. And when somebody points something out to me, I take accountability for what I do. I don't shirk it. I don't hide it. I never will. That's not who I am. But if you're going to ask something, you're going to get a direct, straight answer from me. It's not going to be sugar-coated. It's not going to be wrapped in a bow. It's going to be how I feel. Now, there's a lot of times I put stuff out on the internet, okay, as a citizen, okay? As a citizen, I have that right. There's a document that was produced by the ordinance committee that's hopefully going to get passed one of these days, that says what the conduct of a supervisor or a elected official or an appointed official has to do or should do when it comes to social media. Now, the state of Wisconsin highly recommends that no state employee open up their social media, their personal social media, to anybody from the public other than family and friends. Okay? People don't realize that that's open meetings. If I put something, if I were elected and I put something on my personal page, that is subject to open meeting requests. And it has to be saved. Okay? These are the type of things that people don't think of. Now, have I said things that I probably regret? Yeah. I'll admit it. But like I said, I shoot it right from the hip. I think about what I'm going to say, and I never say anything that I didn't intend. So that's where I stand on it.
At my age, I've had a lot of criticism. Being married almost 55 years, I've had a lot of criticism, and usually I'm wrong. I believe being a public official, you have to hold yourself to a higher level. Have I always been right? No. When I was on the board the last time, did I make some mistakes? Most certainly. Did I have to go to court? Yes, I did. And I hold myself accountable for that. I made a mistake. Did I get 3 different answers for 3 different lawyers? Yes, I did. But when it comes to it, yes, I made a mistake, and I'll admit that. The people in the town, need to know what's going on. I hear we might have a Facebook page. Great idea. What about the people that don't have a Facebook page? Maybe take a page from the village. They have, I believe, a quarterly newsletter. Maybe that's what the town needs. Have a quarterly newsletter out there so the people that aren't on Facebook know what's going on in the town.
What you got, Chris?
Okay, sorry. Been jotting some notes myself, gentlemen, so. All right, where do you see our police services in the future? A joint PD with the village? A town WPD that contracts out to the village, or a sole town WPD only?
Great question. I can tell you that I was passionate about keeping our PD local and not going with the sheriff's department. And I want to move forward as such. In other words, I said earlier, I think it's important that we support the police chief that we have, the new chief. I think he's got a lot of work ahead of him, and the board needs to actively support him on that. I think we need to know what the right size is for our police force. And also, as I've said earlier, I think we need to look at a collaboration between the village and the town. And I see in the future where we could possibly have a 1 PD that is that's a true shared resource. I believe right now, we send a bill to the town. I don't know if we send it monthly or if it's annual, and saying, hey, we had 2 officers here over this period of time. Here's your bill. That's not the relationship I would like to see us moving forward with the village. I would like to see a better collaboration with the village and have the village have an active input in how the police force is developed, especially if we're going to look towards true collaboration. So again, to reiterate, I'm in support of the town police department. I'm against any kind of outsourcing to the sheriff's department in the county, and I'm open to further collaboration with the village towards a one PD in the future.
I'm also strongly in favor of the Waterford Police Department, keeping the Waterford Police Department and the track that it's on right now. I have a tremendous amount of confidence in Chief O'Neill. I was involved in hiring him, and I've worked with him since he's gotten on board. He has a big job to do, and we need to support him in every way we can to help get him there. From a strategic perspective, going back to many of the things that we've already mentioned here, I think the strategic answer is for the town and the village to collaborate together and create one police department. That is what makes sense, and that would set a significantly important tone for both of these communities in terms of how we move forward. What we're doing right now, it's suboptimal, and there's an opportunity, and it shouldn't be that hard, to create a combined police force. We've got a leader in place who I have confidence in, and I think could do a tremendous job in leading such an entity. So I think the opportunity is there. I would like to see it move faster. I would like to see it move more intentionally forward and make it happen.
Well, I'm a strong supporter of the police department, that's for darn sure. First of all, I want to thank Eddie over there for the fine work he's done on our police committee. You know, we got a police chief that walked into a quagmire. And this man has taken the bull by the horns and done one heck of a job, in my eyes, establishing a police department. It's going to move forward. And I'm all for a combined police department, 150%. Let the people that know that business do that business. We don't have any, as a board, they picked, everybody picked our chief. And we gotta honor that commitment and let him do his job. And I think he's doing one hell of a job. I'm gonna support him any way I can. And that includes, I'm gonna be doing some fundraising with a couple other people to get our police department a little less stressed out on money. So that's where I sit on it.
Being on the police committee, we did interview the candidates, including the chief, which we made the recommendations to the town board. We are going to be having a meeting in the near future with the village to discuss having a joint department. Right now, there's been a second phase of a document that the village has looked at. It still needs a lot of work. We need to hammer it out, but I believe we can have a joint department. We're already working to that point. Right now, we have a contract with the village, and I believe it is up June 30th of this year. Hopefully by that time, we can have a joint department in place where it will be run by a police commission and not by either municipality. They will have people on that board, but they will not have input. The police commission will run it. They will actually come up with a budget and share it to the different municipalities.
So again, I am a big fan of the police department. And if you think about it, Chief O'Neill's been in here 4 months. It's not long. I think we have to have a little patience for everything to kind of start getting back on track. And I think a joint police department would be ideal, as long as it's for the town, means we have the same coverage we have now. I'm not for a joint police department and then we're covered less. I think we can't skimp on our police force. I think that's something we need to make a concerted effort to support all the way around. And I do really love the idea of a police commission too. I think it's, rather than an administrator calling the shots or a committee, calling the shots. I think a commission would be the perfect thing to move it forward.
All right, perfect segue into the next question. Sometimes these just kind of fall into our lap. Do you agree with the idea of a police commission? Why or why not?
I think Phil said that great. I mean, a police commission is an independent entity that I think is going to focus, give the subject matter the level of focus that it needs to have. You wouldn't have this split arrangement of police committees and administrators and other entities all weighing in. You have a chartered body exclusively focused on running the police department and overseeing it, and that is the way that it should be done.
I agree with Tom 100%. I'm not going to drag it on. We need to move forward in an expeditious manner and get things done, and the police commission is one heck of a way to get it going.
The only way to have a joint department is have it run by a police commission. You can't have either municipality. It has to be a commission that has no ties to either and looks at the overall issue, makes up the budget, works with the people, does disciplinary action. It's up to them. It would not be up to the boards.
Well, I think I said it in the last one, but I think a commission's the way to go because it's impartial, and it also keeps the rumors from like, oh, so-and-so's getting this because of that. And I think it just keeps everything impartial and everything run tip-top and par.
Unfortunately, previous town boards did a horrible job, in my opinion, of managing and dealing with the police department. It looks like there was a lot of HR issues and obviously a lot of poor planning. We knew ahead of time that the previous chief was retiring, and the board did virtually nothing to start interviewing and get a replacement well before the retirement took place. That was a big mistake. And then it carried forward with other HR issues coming up. Absolutely, I think a police commission is needed. It can address those issues. I think it can run the department much better than the board was running it previously. So I would be in favor of a police commission.
All right, Dave. What steps, if any, do you believe need to be taken to inform the people about the coming property tax reassessments?
Well, as I stated earlier, we got to get out to the public now what that means to them, how it takes place, how it works, and what it means. Most importantly, what it means. You know, it's going to be difficult on some, and we've got to take that into consideration, how, if possible, we can help them through something. Somebody bought a house in 2008 and hasn't been reassessed, okay? Wow. Now we're gonna come through and equalize their value? Man, that's a hard thing to take, I'm sorry. But it has to be done. How do we do it? Expeditiously, because we're under state mandate, because it wasn't done. We've got to do it expeditiously, and we've got to do it fairly, and we've got to have some empathy for town residents that this is going to affect in a negative way. And I mean that sincerely. What, as a town, can we do to help these people? We have people, widows, no husband, living on a fixed income, bought their house 30, 40 years ago. You know, they're going to be hurting. They're on fixed incomes. We have retired people on fixed incomes in this town. We have to have empathy for them, and as a town, look at a way to get them through here so they don't leave our community. They're assets.
Unfortunately, I'm one of those people that has had a house in this town since the house I'm in now since 1977. Being in the public, I do know that we're getting reassessed, and I know how that's gonna affect me. But he's right, a lot of the people in the town do not know that, especially the elderly. I think maybe sending something out to each house, notifying what's going on ahead of time, and fairly soon, so they can start planning for it. You know, like you said, being on a fixed income, it's going to be a rather bit of a shocker. And these people don't know that. A lot of them are not on Facebook, so we need to send something out so they know that it's gonna be coming. You know, all of a sudden somebody comes through and says, oh, your house reassessed, and they open their tax bill next year and they have a heart attack because they see it double. That's not fair, so we need to notify the people now.
I agree with that, but I don't think it should just be, it's gotta be everybody, because think about even people that escrow their taxes. If they see a $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 increase, they're gonna get their tax bill and go, oof. I think that we should definitely start communicating it now. And I mean, listen, it stinks to have to be reassessed, but it's law. We fell out of compliance. We have to do it. That's part of the process, and I think we just need to really hammer that home to everybody so nobody is taken aback by like, oh crap, look what happened.
We have a town assessor who's going to be retiring very soon. As a town board, we have to address this. We've got to get either another entity that can do the assessments in place, and we got to make sure that those assessments and the full assessments are being done on the recommended basis by the state for every 5 years. Waiting since 2008 to now do a final assessment is not the way to run the town and the tax base. I agree with what people have said here. We're going to have to inform the citizens of the town that this is coming. They need to have a better understanding. What it's not, in my understanding, it is not us raising revenue for the town. It's not a revenue raising activity. It's a leveling activity. And there's a lot of unfairness that's going on in the town with recent sales. So if my neighbor sold a house to Tom and his taxes were $6,000, and Tom thinks he's buying a house and his taxes are going to be $6,000, he gets an unawakening surprise that his taxes are maybe $12,000, and my taxes are $6,000. When this leveling occurs, it's likely my taxes will go up. Perhaps Tom's will come down a little bit after buying the house. We owe that too to the new residents that have either built in the town or have purchased homes that were existing, and then all of a sudden got a unwelcome surprise for increased taxes, property taxes that they didn't expect.
All right, so it's been said, but communication is the key. By as many channels and forums and meetings and whatnot that we can have, so that we can inform the folks in the town as best we can in terms of what is happening. Dispel rumors like the one that Bill just mentioned, that, you know, people assume this is going to be some sort of big revenue grab for the town or whatever. Absolutely not the case. Unfortunately, the reality of this thing is that communication needs to both unpack how did we get here and what happened or didn't happen, and it has to describe where are we going and what are we going to do differently in the future. You have to address both of those things. And the reality of this situation, as I've learned this process, is the town was in compliance from 2008 to 2023. There was nothing out of compliance. There was no revaluations done because they weren't mandated or didn't have to do them, but the town was in compliance. That doesn't mean things were not getting out of whack in terms of valuation from neighbor to neighbor across the board over all those years, because they were. The reality of this is there's a natural inclination that people want to break bad about our assessor. Our assessor doesn't make the decision about when a revaluation happens. The town board makes that decision. The town board gives the direction to the assessor. The town board made the decisions for the last however many years about whether or not to address this issue. In 2023, we became out of compliant, and we now have to address the issue. And our hand is forced. Going forward, one of the things we cannot do, in my opinion, is to go back to doing what was done from 2008 to 2023, because that definitely did not work.
Okay, another question to dovetail with this subject. Explain why tax assessments will go up for some but not all. They're saying that everyone will pay higher taxes.
I think Tom pretty much answered it. People, the house might have been assessed at $300,000 on the water, and it sells for $1 million. Well, they're paying on $1 million now. Reassessments, like my house is gonna go up. That house that's being assessed at $1 million might come down. So, like they said, it's gonna be a leveling. It's gonna be a shock for us people that have been here for a long time, but the people that have just moved into the area, it's gonna level it out, so their neighbors are paying just like they are paying.
I really don't think you can explain it any better than that. I mean, it really is. That's the case.
Why is because the town board was not following the guidelines of the state and doing more full assessments in a regular basis. I believe the village has been. I think for years there's been a conversation in Waterford that, the village has higher taxes. They pay so much more in taxes. The reason probably is they were following the state guidelines and the town was not. As Tom alluded to, we can't afford to continue to operate that way.
Yeah, just to finish the thought on this, the unfortunate part about this, the unfair part about this, is that the approach that was taken since 2008 up till today actually built a false sense of security on the part of the people who have been here very long and haven't moved or haven't renovated or updated their house. They built a false sense of security that my tax bill was straight and level or hardly ever changed at all. And that was unfair to those people, in my opinion. And I will tell you, I've only been here since 2016, and I, quote unquote, benefited from this. I could never understand why my tax bill wasn't going up. Year after year after year. I didn't know. Now I know.
I'll just echo what everybody has said so far. But I still want to say this. There's a reason why it happened. That reason has been discovered. There's other reasons it's happened that are being not so much divulged. There's certain laws you gotta follow as an assessor. Were they followed? I don't know. But there are things that happen that the state will tell you it's very hard to prosecute. And one of them is chasing sales. And I don't know if that happened here, but I'll tell you one thing. There's a reason I'm paying what I'm paying and my neighbor's paying half, if not less. And nobody's ever come through my house. All that I know is that I'm assessed at exactly what I mortgaged. How did that happen? Interesting question.
Right. All right, Phil. Should we have a fire district? Why or why not?
That's one of those things that I think that could really benefit maybe with the collaboration of the town. That's fire department, when you need them, you need them. I feel that, well, what do you call it a district? Let me ask that.
Sorry, this is the way the question was submitted. As you remember, these are submitted to to the GA, you know, via
I'm
Facebook
guessing
Messenger.
they're calling a fire district, I'm speculating they're calling it a collaboration with the town and village. I mean, I seriously, really.
Doug's the expert.
Okay, Doug, sorry.
I think I can answer. Fire district would be similar to. Oh, sorry.
I heard you just fine.
Doug's gonna maybe shed some light here on. where
A
this
fire
is
district,
going.
from what I understand, would be similar to having our police commission. Let's say Waterford, Michigan, and Rochester got together. Two of them are private companies. They'd have to give their equipment up, just like the village would, and it would go all into a pool. It would be run by the district. So, you know, let's say Michigan raised money and bought $1 million tanker. That all of a sudden becomes part of the district. So, you want me to answer the question right away?
Go ahead.
Well, I think a fire district would be great. There would be a lot of work probably to get to it. Like I said, two of the departments are private companies, so they would have to be giving up their assets. Would there be a benefit? Most certainly. I would like to see this in the future. Right now, I don't know if they will do it. It would be up to the management of the departments.
Do you have something you want to share to that, Phil? You have an opportunity here.
Yeah, thanks, Doug.
No problem.
You know, this is one of those things that I think you really need a lot of research on and willingness. And I think in theory it sounds like a great idea, but I'll be honest with you, I don't know enough about it to give you a really good opinion on it. So I'm gonna say that would be one of the things that I would definitely have to research the heck out of.
I echo the need for research. I would need to look at that more closely, understand what a district would be made of. You know, would it be just the town? Would it be the town, the village? Could it be Rochester? You know, I think it may make sense, but again, you've got to lay out all the costs. You've got to look at the aging equipment. You've got to look at all the resources, labor that those three departments make up. And does it make sense to create a district with that? It may. I know one thing, listening to the Michigan Fire Chief talk to us in December, his labor costs are going up. He constantly needs more maintenance and more equipment to service our area. I'm sure all the other departments, the village and Rochester, have the similar challenges. So if we all are struggling and having the same challenge, then it might be beneficial to look more seriously at pooling our resources and coming together. So I would be in favor of doing more research.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add on that. I mean, not an area that I'm deeply familiar with. I would just tell you that, you know, I think it's something, if there is economic benefit to be gained and efficiency gains to happen and increased service opportunity across the board, those kinds of benefits, then it should be looked at. I believe that part of the state's innovation grant funding program would be incenting communities like ours to look seriously at doing something like this. But again, I don't know enough about it to really put a specific stake in the ground on this particular one.
Again, I don't know a lot about it, but I can tell you what's happening around us. West Dallas and Towson combined their fire departments. The reason they did that is to benefit all the residents of the two entities and take advantage of the state grant. The town of Butler, well, I think they're a village of Butler, closed up their volunteer fire department and went with Brookfield. The reason being, they were both given state money. Now, you know, we've got to look at things like that, and absolutely, you know, Michigan, you know, I thank them every day, man. I had a bad accident, and they were there for me, a bad one. And it's imperative for our residents to feel safe in their homes, safe on their roads, and have a response that's timely and efficient.
I believe I pretty much gave my answer already. I would like to give a shout out to Tishman Fire. We did have a garage fire right down the road from me a couple of weeks ago, and it was one of the coldest nights out there, and they were out there. They were the first truck in, and they did an excellent job. It was fully involved when they got there, but they did save the structures next to it, man. And we did have mutual aid from a lot of different departments, whether it was Rochester, Waterford, Norway, I believe Vernon was even out there. So.
All right, we only got 4 more left, guys. Hey, I think we should all be proud of the participation that we had from the citizens for this. All these questions, fantastic. All right, so we're gonna shift gears a little bit. So with so many discussions and social media posts of differing political views and strong political leanings that we have seen by some of the candidates, how will your personal biases and political beliefs affect your ability to make decisions that are in the best interest of the town of Waterford and all its residents?
So, from my perspective, honesty, integrity, trust, open communication, those are things that I lead with, and that's how I would govern in this position. As far as political bias, I really don't think that politics at the local level is anywhere near what it is at the federal levels and the levels that we see throughout our country. As it relates to social media, some of you may know I struggle a bit with social media. For some reason, Facebook did not like me creating a campaign page with Bill McCormick and a personal page with Bill McCormick. Apparently there's a Bill McCormick out there that has violated some Facebook things. So when I was very complimentary and somebody did respond to one of my posts, I got shut down. And that's happened at least 3 or 4 times. So it's probably difficult for most citizens to see me socially on social media and have an understanding of where I stand on things. This is a great forum tonight. It's given me a great opportunity to talk to each of you and give you a perspective of my views on what's important to our community. So with that, that's all I can respond with, is just how I go about my day, how I conduct myself in business as a professional, with customers, with colleagues. When I serve on boards, I try to be very respectful of those on the board, listen to what their viewpoints are, take input. I want more input from you, the public, to help me in how I govern. Thank you.
So first thing to know or understand, these are nonpartisan positions. This is not picking a team, picking a side, picking a camp kind of thing. And that works really, really well for me, because I'm not a pick a camp kind of person. Ain't nobody's flag flying outside of my house on either side or anything of that nature. My focus is on unity, not division. And I struggle with what I see happening broadly. I struggle more when I see it happening locally within our own town. Even when we get into things like, well, the people on the lake versus the people that aren't on the lake, and we're gonna now let's create some division between people on the lake and not on the lake. I understand that people have different perspectives, and it's important to understand those perspectives. If it becomes divisive, if it becomes situationally detrimental to our community, like we saw happen in the past couple of years with respect to our police force and our local policing, that is devastating. And it takes a long time, as we're finding out, to crawl back to a better, more healthy place as a community from something like that. So I am strongly for unity, to listening to all sides, to bringing people together for the betterment of our community, not picking camps, not choosing a tribe, but working together as a community.
I've said it before, I'll say it again. I'm all for unity. I'm all for moving forward together. I do go on Facebook. I do go on Instagram. I do all these things, okay? But as an elected official, that is going to drastically change. It has to, okay? Right now, I'm talking as Dave Orton. And I say things on social media. I do. And are they the right things? You might not think so. But everything I say out there is truthful, and nobody's ever been able to say they're not. They try to. Once I'm elected, if I'm elected, I make this guarantee right now. You won't see a lot of me on a lot of pages. What you will see is a Dave Orton Town Supervisor page that everybody will be welcome to. And that's where I stand on it.
Social media. I am on Facebook, and that's about it. The only reason I'm on there is my granddaughters actually set up my accounts. When you're on the board, I believe in putting my own opinions aside. You have to look at what's best for your township. You gotta change the hats. You know, I might think something, but if that's not good for the town, like, hey, it would be great to not be reassessed because my taxes would be lower, but it's not fair for the town. We need a reassessment. You have to think what's best for the township. You have to work together with the people.
So I do think social media is one of those things that you can't let it eat you alive, so to speak. I think Tom brought up a great point. This is nonpartisan. This is nobody up here is doing this because they want the great title or the bodacious check that comes with it. But I feel like social media is like one of those necessary evils, and I feel like personally I can take the criticism all day long. I don't respond to it if it's flat out hate, and I also think that people are too comfortable anonymously. Oh, this, that, and the other thing. I think it's become such a society thing that, you know, I'm gonna anonymously slander somebody, and I think that's it's poor judgment, and I think it's cowardice. So, I mean, I have big shoulders. Say what you want about me. Say it as you. I have no problem taking criticism.
All right. It was mentioned by one of the candidates that there were areas within the current budget that could be cut. What specifically would you target or give examples of, if any?
Well, I'm not sure who mentioned that. But I can tell you that I've been intimately involved in the budget planning process for this year, and any cuts that were made. And I can honestly say that at this point in time, there may be a couple $100 here, a couple $100 there on some line item, but it's a pretty bare bones budget. There's not a lot of fat in that budget. And if there were additional areas that were there to be cut, they're not coming to mind in terms of what they would be.
Based on what I've seen sitting through some of the meetings and that, this board, our current board, did a heck of a job coming forward with a budget that was well thought out of, well developed, and more importantly, it was a balanced budget. And for whatever reason, they had to turn around and cut because some residents didn't like the budget. They had to cut. They threw a number out and said, that's your problem, okay? The budget itself is strong. It's what it is, and there isn't any overspending in it. I've read through it. I think it's a good budget. Could it be a little bit higher? I would have been all for the 230 number, all for it, because they did have to take away things that I felt were necessary. So that's where I sit on it.
Looking at the budget, and if you want, here is a copy of the town budget. And there isn't anything that I feel you could trim anymore. I looked every item over, and I think they did a great job in making a balanced budget.
I do like the idea it's a balanced budget. I think that's great. Specifically, I don't think you can just cut anything, but what I would like to see is maybe going after, not after, but taking a look at vendors. Have we shopped? I mean, listen, this is a $5 million budget. This is not a huge Fortune 500 company's budget. And you know, a couple hundred here, 1,000 here, 2,000 there. It all starts to add up. Can we look at our vendors, where we buy our insurance from, where we buy, you know, heck, even go down to the cell phone. Have we shopped everything to save anything we can? And maybe we haven't, but it's worth a look at.
You know, I would agree with Phil's statement. I think it'd be on the revenue side, if anything, to change. And maybe that's with some of the permits and the fees that are associated with them. But that's going to be such a slight incremental change. I think having a balanced budget going forward is excellent. I think the board did a great job. I think back in December when they reduced the budget by $8,000, chose not to pay for any committee support fees and things to the committee members. I think that was a good idea. But we also need people to step forward as a board and as a volunteer, basically a volunteer organization. I mean, it's a small amount of money that the board members get paid here. They need help. So we may need to look at further expenditures in the future to bring in some skilled resources to help us as we develop and growth plans and things of that nature.
All right, second to last one. If elected, what do you hope to see accomplished after your two-year term for the town and or for the village?
I like that whoever wrote that added in and or the village. As I stated earlier, we're all one community, and I want to see unity. I want to see I want to see us work together with the village. I want to see progress in things that mean something to both of us. Okay? On the town side of things, I am really concerned about our finances. Very concerned. Now, Phil brought something up about vendors, okay? You know, I really don't think we got a very good bid process going, and again, Operations Committee and the Ordinance Committee are gonna sit down and start working on these things. That's what we need to do. Move forward. We can't keep working in the past with the past ideas, the past technology. It's just not beneficial to anybody. We're going deeper and deeper, and we're losing and losing. Now it's time to move forward and do things properly. I'm not going to say anybody did something not proper, but things can be done in a much better, expeditious, and financially beneficial way for the entire town. And then plus with the village, we can do a lot of things to make this a wonderful, wonderful place to live. And that's what I'm hoping to do, is move us forward.
Well, the first would be, we addressed issues. Right now, and I'll use the school board, you have an informational item 1 month, and the next month it's an action item. In our town, we have it as an informational item. 6 months later, it's still an informational item. We need to address the issues. We can't just keep, well, we'll talk about it next month, we'll talk about it next month. We need to start moving along. Another issue would be, we have 3 committees. 2 of the committee people are right here sitting next to me. They have some excellent ideas that they've passed on to the board. The board hasn't acted on them. What happens to them? I don't know. I've heard comments that they fall into a black hole. Well, we need to start addressing this. It's not the 1980s anymore. Let's move along. We have 5 people on the board. All 5 people should be knowledgeable as to what's going on. Next, I would like to see a part-time administrator to help us move forward. Work with the village, obviously. That's high priority. We can get money from the state if we can combine services. Look at some of the other issues, like I said. Have a 10-year plan for road improvement, even down to working with the DPW building. That was another one, push the can down the road. It's been that way since I was on the board, and I was on 4 years ago now. The walls move back and forth because they're rusting out. This should have been addressed. This needs to be done. Station 2, the wood on the top sort of waves at you. That was supposed to have been done, it wasn't. We need to start moving the town forward and stop pushing the can down the road.
I would really like to see movement on anything. I mean, I know there's other facets, but I feel like so far we've gotten a new copy machine. We've talked about getting a Facebook page. We've talked about maybe updating a website. We haven't, and they're right. I just think everything is moving at a glacier pace, and I realize certain things like the PD, you can't force that. It has to happen organically. But little things I feel can have been accomplished. And I feel like every meeting I go to, all right, we're gonna table this, or we're gonna bring this up next time, and then next month some other little issue pops up, and I feel like the board isn't really getting a lot accomplished. And I'm not saying it's anybody in particular's fault, but I just feel like, man, certain things could be real easy and should be just, boom, it's done. But it just seems, for what we've done and where we've come from, we haven't really accomplished a lot, and we really should have. And I think some of that has to do with transparency.
What would I like to see accomplished in my 2 years serving as the town supervisor? I'd like to see us develop a true growth plan. I'd like to see us develop a road maintenance plan. That's a 10 to 15-year plan. I'd like to see us have more transparency and input from the public at our town meetings. I'd like to see the boundary agreement passed and more collaboration take place between the village and the town. Thank you.
I agree with everything that Bill just said, and if I was on this board for another 2 years, I'd be working very diligently on any of those things as well. I'll add a couple others. A strategic growth plan that focuses on strengthening the revenue side of the budget is critical. There's partnerships that can be developed. Dave mentioned the SORPAC one. The Racine County Economic Development Corporation is another partnership that the town could establish with an outside entity that focuses on attracting valuable, desirable growth opportunities to a community like ours. You need to partner with other agencies, other entities, because the board has no way it has capacity to do all this stuff. You have to leverage others to try to move that forward. They have the expertise, they have the skills to do it. We have to build those partnerships with other organizations that can help us market ourselves as a town and to try to find growth opportunities that make sense for us, that align with our values as a town. Those are things that I would like to see happen, and I would like to see the other things that we've talked about tonight with respect to the police force, and the other things that Bill mentioned move forward. And the sense of urgency thing is a real issue, and if Chairman Siklinski was still here, I would say it to his face, because I've said it to his face many times already, is we have to move faster. We have to move faster.
All right. Last question. And then, don't do cartwheels, Doug. Following everybody's answer to this, you will get a minute and a half where each of you will get a closing statement, okay? So giving you a little chance, if you didn't pre-write it, you can think about it while everybody's going around, throwing you a bone. How would you describe your purpose as a town board supervisor?
I believe the purpose is to represent the people and what is best for the municipality. We have to look at it, a lot of things have been brought up tonight, a strategic plan, work with the county to update our 2030 plan to 2050. This should have been done 3 years ago, and the county has put it off, or they didn't put money aside and so on. This needs to be addressed. Work more with the village so we can collaborate more.
I would like to basically be more focused on the people of the town. I think that we need to work with the village, that's been said thousands of times tonight. But I feel like the people of the town deserve a better transparency, better information, better avenue at getting the information. And they should have a general, it should be put out what they have for a plan, what our plans are, what are we looking for, and they should also have a great input in that plan. And I think that's one of my biggest things is I'd like to see more transparency, more information given.
I would approach the job with a driven focus to move the town forward. I would have a laser focus on growth and increasing our revenue streams. I would definitely have more open and transparent government. And I would govern and lead for the people. That would be my main focus as a supervisor moving forward.
I'm a servant leader. I'm here to serve. That's what this role is. I'm here to serve the people of the town, to listen to what they want, and try to do anything that I can to lead this municipality forward, to be a place that people are proud to live in and love to live in, that is well run and is an attractive place to be, to raise a family, to run a business, but to listen to the people first and foremost. That's why I'm here. That's my purpose.
I'll echo what Tom said again, but from my perspective as a committee chair, I'm the only committee that is now allowing public input. And it wasn't well received by the board, and I'm being honest when I say these things. I don't hide behind things. But I'm a man of my word, and I said I was gonna do it right at the start, and it's been done. So transparency, transparency, transparency. I would hope that people would move to join the town. Public listening sessions, very important, very important. I think I bring to the table that idea of unity, but moving forward together.
All right. As we close, just a couple things for the people in the audience. The candidates, many of them have brought flyers and signs. You're welcome to pick them up after the last closing statements here. And I'm sure the candidates will hang around if you want to talk to them. So Doug, you're welcome to kick off your closing statement.
Okay, first off, I would like to thank the people that put this forum together. It was great to get this out to the community. I'd like to thank the people here for their input and the people listening online. I also would like to thank the candidates. They had some great ideas. Moving forward, being retired, I can devote the time that it takes to be a town supervisor. I think Tom can tell you now, it's not just 2 meetings a month. Sometimes it's 40, 50 hours a week. So it does take time. I will do my research on the different issues, not just rubber stamp what's going on. It takes time to look at the issues, but you have to. Example is, even though the town board didn't look at pier permits, I used to drive down and talk to the people and look at the piers ahead of time, just to see what was going on. A couple of things that I had mentioned, having our part-time administrator, I think is very important for this town to do. We talked about it last year, it was never done. Having a town/office park, which the gentleman down there mentioned, great idea, and I think it would bring extra revenue to the town. Working with the village, very important, and sharing ideas. Like I had said, repairing the DPWs and Station 2, another important issue. Having a Facebook thing is great, but like I said, there's a lot of people without Facebook. Having a newsletter that goes out so the people are informed. Like I had said before, I wanted to have public listening sessions. That's one of the mistakes I admit I didn't do when I was on the first 3 years. I done it when I was on the greatest school board. Oh, sorry, done. I got the stop button.
We're down to a minute and a half on these, so just inform. Yep.
Okay. You know, I got into this quagmire, and I'm going to call it a quagmire. I made promises to my family I'd never get involved in politics again. Well, I did. And what I bring to the town is fresh ideas. I'm not on any committee, any civic groups. I'm not on any boards of anybody else. I'm just me, a resident. And I bring to the town a clear understanding of what government means from past experiences in government. I bring to the town years and years of experience in multi-private sectors, from multinational companies to local companies, as directors, as managers, as a manager, as supervisors. I went all the way up the food chain as high as I could go. I'm retired, been retired since 2014, and I dedicate my time, and that's important, dedicating the time. I'm not doing this for Dave, I'm doing this for our community.
I too am retired and never thought that I would ever be doing this, ever thought I would be doing this. My wife would tell you it's because I was never a hobby person. I never had hobbies, so when I retired, this is what I ended up doing. But for whatever reason, here I am. I've got 3 years of service to the town of Waterford under my belt. I believe my leadership skills, I believe my interpersonal skills, I believe my relationship building skills, my visionary skills, and strategic skills can be of significant value to this town. I would love to continue to exercise those skills on behalf of all of our neighbors, everyone who lives in the town. Some of you know that this process of actually sitting here and running for this job entails an upfront sort of nomination process. You have to go out and get signatures of people that are willing to endorse you for this role. Well, for whatever it's worth, all 4 of these gentlemen up here signed my nomination papers endorsing me for this job. All 4 of them did. I thank them for that. I'm honored by that. I don't know what it means in the long run of where this thing is ultimately going, but I appreciate that endorsement, and I want to continue working on behalf of this town.
Tom, you had my vote. I'd like to thank Tanya and the Waterford Government Accountability Forum here tonight. I'd like to thank everybody for your questions. I'd like to thank the public for coming out and sticking with us for this long debate session that we had tonight, but I think it was great, a lot of great questions. I'd be remiss in when I described myself and gave my background, I left out my beautiful wife, Julie, of 35 years. We have 2 boys, and we have 2 granddaughters, and we have 2 new grandchildren coming this year. So it's an exciting year, regardless of how this goes for me with trying to get out of town. So I'd like to thank everybody for that. And I think you've got a good background, a good understanding tonight how I addressed the questions and giving a little more insight into my background and my experience and what I think I bring to the table from a leadership perspective for this town. So I would ask you to vote for me, please, in the upcoming primary. And if I can make it through that, of course, vote for me in April. If anybody is interested in a yard sign, I'd like to get your address and things. I did not bring my signs tonight, but I do have some available. Or if you have any questions for me about my positions on things, anything I said tonight that wasn't clear for you, I will hang out for a little bit tonight and feel free to come up and I'd like to meet with you. Thank you.
I'm just gonna go with one big thank you, just to save time, because I'm sure all of you wanna get out of here. I think what I bring to the table is my small business thing. When you run a small business, and mine's a real small business, you think outside the box. You know, again, 1,000 here, 2,000 there, that all adds up in a small business, and I think that's what I bring to the table. Growth isn't gonna happen tomorrow. We need to put the pieces in place to make the growth happen. But for right now, we have to economize, we have to spend our money wisely. I think we're running out of spending other people's money. We have to be realistic on where we're at, and hopefully the future's better for us. Being a small business, I'm really good at a budget. I really, you know, I look for every deal. I go through everything line by line. Also, I'm not afraid to do my own research. I've done, you know, nobody's gonna get that truck part cheaper if you don't look it up. So I think that's what I add to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your time this evening. I'm glad I could be your moderator, and even though she doesn't want me to do it, I want to thank Tanya for her hard work the last few weeks putting this together. My wife for running around and getting questions from the crowd, and have a good evening and a safe campaign.